Everyone in. This is our Sunday Night Live. As we guys know, as of right now, we have the college football playoffs. There's been a lot of takes been firing away, a lot of great things. Like I said, welcome back to the TD Sports Press channel here. If you guys are new here, leave a follow. It would really help us out. We just hit 15,000 followers on TikTok on Thursday, so that's awesome. Thank you guys. So I guess the next goal is to hit 20,000 on TikTok. And thanks for everyone, wherever you guys are listening to us, whether that is on TikTok, whether that's on Twitter, whether that's on Spotify or YouTube. Appreciate you guys. Please leave a subscribe or follow to whatever. It really does help us out. So, so I'm sure that you guys have already seen what the college football, playoffs are looking like. So let's give I'll give you guys a quick or show as what's going on here. Number one, as you guys know, yesterday Indiana beat Ohio State, and that was a crazy game. Indiana is the number one overall seed. What a story Indiana is. I don't think anyone saw this coming. If you guys did, it was probably a Hoosier fan, and good for you guys. Kirk Cignetti is probably the best coach at the moment of terms of the biggest rebound in college football history is Indiana right now. I don't think anyone can argue that. I think 3 years ago, they were at the bottom of their conference. They were bottom everything. They were like 3-9. They hired Kirk Cignetti when they went to the playoffs last year. This year, they're the number one seed and win the Big Ten. Indiana football is something I have never seen in my lifetime. They've been decent. Maybe they're good enough to make a bowl game. Maybe, go 7-5. Excuse me. Go 8-4. But the way Indiana really has done things, you got to give them props. So they're the number one seed. They will be playing in the Rose Bowl. So they'll be in the Rose Bowl. The second seed was Ohio State. This was one that I was conflicting. If you guys are coming from TikTok, I did some live reactions to this. I thought Georgia would be the number 2 seed, but I'm good with Ohio State staying the number 2 seed. I think that's a good spot for Ohio State. They got to get their mojo back. Let's see if Ohio State can use this moment or adversity that they had like they did Michigan last year. Will this get them fired up and hungry, to go and win the national championship again? I think some people would say that Michigan lost last year to Ohio State was the best thing to happen to that team. So we'll see how Ohio State reacts to this loss they had to Indiana, which was a classic football game. Really great football game. So we'll definitely see what happens with that game. So Ohio State is the 2 seed. I have no complaints with 1 and 2. Number 3 is Georgia. Georgia wins the SEC, goes 12-1, and this isn't even one of the best Kirby Smart football teams he's had. I think this is the most fun he's had coaching a group. I think people would agree with that. But Georgia, you look at what they did yesterday to Alabama. -3 rushing yards. They were on Ty Simpson the entire game. They were bringing pressure from everywhere. And they were getting pressure on the quarterback. Georgia hasn't been able to get pressure on the quarterback for the entire year. And they will be the number 3 seed. Excuse me, I forgot to tell you. Ohio State will be in the Cotton Bowl, and Georgia will be in the Sugar Bowl. So Georgia will be in the Sugar Bowl. They are the 3 seed. The last bye in the college football playoffs that we have is number 4, Texas Tech. And they will be in the Orange Bowl. They'll be in the Orange Bowl. Yep, that's right. They are in the Orange Bowl. So, Texas Tech, they ran through their season. The only game they lost was to Arizona State. They were my preseason prediction to win the Big 12. A lot of people told me I was crazy. I picked Texas Tech back in July to win the Big 12. So, I felt really good about that. Love what they did this year. They beat BYU twice. I know people say, BYU's not that good. Or that. BYU's a solid team. I think we need to give them more credit for what they are. We'll talk about that later. But I think Texas Tech, this is a good spot for Texas Tech. They get that bye. Props to them. Joey is a great head football coach at Texas Tech. They've really turned the tide over there at Texas Tech, which is great. It's good to have Texas Tech. Those are your top 4. So our top 4 seeds are 2 Big Ten, 1 SEC, and 1 Big 12. So those are the 4 teams that get the bye. So now, those games will be probably December 31st, January 1st. Those games are always right around there. So moving on with the number 5. So I'll tell you guys everything. I'll just show you guys all the teams here. We'll kind of give you guys a brief overview of matchups, and then we'll have a show about selections about the matchups in probably next week if I had to guess. So moving on, number 5, Oregon. I think it's a great spot for Oregon. I would have liked Ole Miss to be ahead of Oregon. I'm really skeptical on Oregon's resume. But I think that Oregon now in the college football playoff now, Oregon's healthy. They're going to get healthy. And yeah, they're going to probably get 3.5 weeks because they didn't play this week. So Oregon's a team to watch out for. They might make a late season surge, and they might surprise a couple of teams. Their path might be favorable to Duck fans I've been talking to. They really do like the path. So Oregon at number 5, I'm fine with that. They've been number 5, so they don't move them down. Number 6 is Ole Miss. This was one spot that I thought that could switch. I could see them moving Texas A&M and switching Ole Miss, but they didn't do that. So number 6 is Ole Miss. You look at Ole Miss, they don't have their, Lane Kiffin. We talked about that on the show last week. I'm glad they didn't punish Ole Miss. I just wish, they didn't punish Florida State either. But that's an argument for another day. But Ole Miss at number 6, I think is a great spot for them. They get the home playoff game. And yeah, you looking at Ole Miss. I'm excited to see what they look like. We'll talk about who they're playing a little bit later, but yeah, I'm excited to see what they look like without Lane Kiffin. Obviously, I think their offensive coordinator is coming back to coach. I think that's the latest report. I have no idea what's going on. It's one of the craziest situations ever. So yeah, that is the current situation with that. Moving on, number 7, Texas A&M. Texas A&M they get that home playoff game. They're number 7 after getting beat by Texas, a couple weeks ago. They still get the home playoff game. So Kyle Field. Unfortunately, the game is not going to be. Oh my gosh, the game's not going to be at night. Kyle Field at night for a playoff game would have been cinema, but that's not going to happen. I guess we are against fun. So absolutely crazy, absolutely crazy. So moving on to number 8 is Oklahoma. Oklahoma didn't change. Oklahoma was number 8 last week. They're going to host a playoff game, so good for Oklahoma. Brett Venables had to have this year in order to stay as the head coach at Oklahoma. Oklahoma was my dark horse to make the playoffs, so it was really good to see them in the playoffs, one of my predictions. So, yeah, super excited about that for Oklahoma. 1 second, just getting this in. Okay, so, yeah, super excited for Oklahoma. Get that home playoff game at Norman. Storm and Mormon, or Norman, I don't know if that's even the same. Anyway, Oklahoma is the 8th seed. Number 9, I found pretty ironic. Alabama is number 9. This is where we start having, some issues. And then you look at Alabama. They got beat 28-7 by Georgia. I'm not saying they should be out of the playoff. I'll say that out loud. They should not be out of the playoff. But, whoops. There we go. Anyway, they should not be out of the playoff. But staying at number 9 sets a bad precedent, or however you say that, with we'll talk about BYU. BYU didn't even make it. They went down 3 spots. They lost in their conference championship game. Ohio State went down 1 spot. They lost their conference championship game, and it was way closer. Alabama stays at number 9 after getting beat 28-7. I don't understand that part. There wasn't any consistency with the selection committee when it came to Alabama. If you're going to move, down a spot, because they did it with BYU and they did it with Ohio State, why wouldn't you do it for Alabama? So, and then number 10 was Miami. So let's talk about, before we get into Miami, Notre Dame, who should have been in, let's talk about Alabama and Miami. If it was my personal choice for the playoffs, I would have Miami number 9, Alabama number 10. The reason that I would do that is Miami and Alabama have a common opponent, which is Florida State. As we guys know, Florida State beat Alabama, and Miami beat Florida State. So I would have moved them around. I would have had Miami 9, Alabama 10. That didn't happen. So I didn't quite understand why Alabama gets the benefit of the doubt after what they did with Georgia yesterday. And yeah, we'll talk about more about that later. So moving on. As I talked about earlier, Miami is the 10th seed. And this is something that, I have been saying since the selection process started back in October. How in the world was Notre Dame ahead of Miami when they had the exact same record, now they do, exact same resume, and Miami has the head-to-head? Like, Notre Dame's been ahead of Miami for 6 weeks, and then they moved Miami all of a sudden ahead of Notre Dame, which I'm a fan of. They should have done that. But this just shows me that the selection committee did not know what they were doing with Miami and Notre Dame. I agree. Miami should be number 10. But how in the world do you have Notre Dame? Why did you have Notre Dame ahead of Miami to begin with? And I know what people are going to say. Oh, well, they were never directly, side by side until now. That's true. But that shouldn't matter. I don't know. We got to get rid of this. We'll talk about more how I would change the committee in a minute. But, I mean, looking at this right now, I don't know, man. I feel bad for Notre Dame not making it, but I mean they made their bed. They got beat by Miami week 1. I told everyone for the last 5 weeks that when it comes down to Notre Dame or Miami, if it's between those two teams to make the playoffs, they're gonna pick Miami, and they did. I got trolled. I got Notre Dame fans in my mentions telling me I have no idea what I'm talking about, and what I said exactly happened. But I do feel bad for Notre Dame because. Why in the world? How does Notre Dame just suddenly go down? And I understand they were side by side, but how in the world was that not done 3 weeks ago? I would have had no problem with this if they didn't have Notre Dame ahead of Miami, or Miami ahead of Notre Dame for the last couple of weeks, but they didn't do that. For whatever reason, they didn't do that. So Miami is the 10th seed. So yeah, we'll go through the rest of Tulane was 11, the winner of the AAC, and James Madison was number 12. So I think that's a good spot for those two teams. I don't know about the group. I understand one spot for the group of 5. I don't know about 2. I understand the conference champ. I respect the group of 5. My favorite team's in a group of 5 conference. But the way I look at this, I don't know. I'm going to keep my mind shut, but I think you guys can read my mind about some matchups. So those were the top 12 seeds. Like I said, the first 2 teams out, so it'd be number 13 Notre Dame, number 14 BYU. So we'll talk about that right now. Notre Dame, like I said, Notre Dame. I think this is the first time Notre Dame got shunned for not being in a conference. I think for the entirety of Notre Dame's history, they've never had a moment where they're like, oh, you need to join a conference. And I just want to say this right now. I'm fine with Notre Dame not being in a conference. I think a lot of Power 5 conferences wish they could be run by Notre Dame where they're independent and they're making so much money that they don't even need to join a conference. They're making more money than people in the conferences. If that is wrong, I apologize, but that's from the least of my understanding. That's how I understand it. But I felt like this is the first time, Notre Dame got shunned for not being in a conference. And, their schedule, I mean, they beat Texas A&M. This is a whole different conversation. They beat Miami. It's a whole different conversation. Their best win was USC. I think part of it, you could point at the schedule. I think there's a lot of teams that have weak schedules. I think that I'll talk about how I would change the playoffs, everything like that in a minute. Sorry. We'll just keep it going here. And BYU at 14. BYU's at 14. They got beat by Texas Tech. And, I always felt that BYU should have been ahead of Miami, Notre Dame, and, Miami and Notre Dame especially. They should have been ahead of both those spots, or both those teams. And, it just didn't happen. I understand you can make the argument, oh, they're in the Big 12. They had, a bad schedule, whatever your argument is. How does BYU move down 3 spots after playing in the Big 12 championship game? And they wouldn't have been in the playoffs, granted. But like I said, the biggest takeaway I have from these reactions, looking at this, is how does Alabama not move down at least a spot, one spot? They're the 10th seed instead of the 9th. I just don't understand. I wouldn't have had a problem if they kept Ohio State 1 and Indiana 2. And they didn't move Alabama. I'd be fine with that. But they moved every other conference team that lost. You look at the 25 as well. Teams are moving down for losing for losing the conference championship game. And so like I said, I'll get to the matchups here. I'll talk about more about selection, all that stuff in a minute. So, December 19th are when all the December 19th and December 20th. So I wish it was September. But December 19th will be Oklahoma or Alabama going to Oklahoma. That will be a 6:00 kick. That's going to be a great game. Like I said, I'm not really going to preview them, but I'm excited to get this rematch. If you guys, the last time these two teams played, Alabama doubled the yards for Oklahoma, but they had those turnovers. So this time they're going to Oklahoma. Last time Alabama went to Oklahoma, it was not pretty. So I am looking forward to the matchup. Like I said, we'll break these down more as they come closer. The next game, December 20th, the next game will be Miami and going to Kyle Field and Texas A&M. That's a noon kickoff. Man, that's going to be a great game at Kyle Field. I'm excited to see what both programs are. I think both programs have been called overrated by a lot of fans, so it's just fitting they play each other. So the winner of Miami, or let me go back to Alabama, Oklahoma. The winner of Alabama, Oklahoma will play Indiana in the Rose Bowl. So the winner of that will go there. The winner of Miami and Texas A&M will be in the Cotton Bowl against Ohio State. So, I mean, my initial thought when I look at that is if Texas A&M goes to the Cotton Bowl, it's going to be a home game against Ohio State. We'll talk about that more later. The next playoff game that will be Ole Miss will play number 11 Tulane. That will be a 1:30 kick on December 20th. These two teams already played. Those two teams already played. And we'll see what happens. I think it's kind of ironic that Jake Retzloff is in the playoffs and BYU isn't. I find that kind of funny. But yeah, great for Tulane. Great group of 5 team. John Summerall is a great coach. And yeah, so I'm excited to see what he does at Tulane or there. So hopefully they can make some changes. The winner of that game will play Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. So we might get an Ole Miss Georgia rematch in the Sugar Bowl, which should be a great game. And then the last matchup will be number 12 James Madison going to Oregon and playing there at night. That could get ugly quick. I hope not, but yeah, you look at that game. Like I said, Oregon, they're going to be more healthy. James Madison, they got to come in with the underdog mentality. No one's going to pick them because they shouldn't. No one should pick them. And yeah, the winner of this game will play Texas Tech in the Orange Bowl. Oregon Texas Tech Orange Bowl would be probably, I think, the matchup I'd most look forward to. I'll be honest with you guys. So yeah, that is the college football bracket. That's the bracket. We're gonna get on to the next portion of this show. So before that happens, if you guys are still listening, leave a follow, guys. It really does help us out. Whether you're on Spotify, YouTube, X, or TikTok, leave a follow if you guys love this content. It really does help us out. So just so everyone knows, we'll be live 2 days a week. We'll be live tonight. We'll be live Thursday night. That is our scheduling here. Obviously, we are live every night on TikTok. So if you guys have a TikTok account or anything like that, we're on there all the time. So moving on. How would I change the playoffs? I look at this, and I think it is a broken system. Just looking at this, it makes no sense to me. I'm a big fan of getting rid of conference championship games and having play-in games. I think we should have teams earn spots, not just fall into those spots. Like Miami, for example. What did they do to get the number 10 seed last week? They did absolutely nothing. So I'm a big believer in play-in games. If we're gonna have conference championship games, we should have play-in games the same day. Could you imagine, for example, we had Miami and Vandy playing for a spot in the college football playoff yesterday. Imagine we had Notre Dame and Oklahoma, for example, playing to get a spot in the college football playoff. Tell me that wouldn't get ratings. All I hear all the time about is, college football, they do everything for ratings. If college football is all about ratings, we should be having play-in games. Like, these games would be incredible. Imagine Texas playing, Alabama for a spot in the playoff. Like, those games would be insane. They would be crazy. I think that's what we need in our sport, is we need teams to go and earn spots. Go play for the spots. And I think that each conference should have a certain amount of bids they get. I'm not a big fan of the 24-team model. I like the 16-team model. I think, or 16-4. I'd be fine with a 14-team model, quite frankly, with 4 to the Big 12 or 4 to the Big 10, 4 to the SEC, 2 to the ACC, 2 to the Big 12, 1 in the Group of 5, and one bid or whatever, one other bid. So and just play for those games. Like, imagine, like, the SEC, we had Alabama and Georgia playing for like, both teams are guaranteed to get a playoff spot. Both teams are guaranteed to get a playoff spot. And then you have, like, the 3 seed, which would be, like, Ole Miss played the number 6 seed in the SEC, which would be, like, Texas. Like, winner, that game is at Ole Miss, Texas Ole Miss. Winner goes to the college football playoff. And, yeah, and then the 4-5 matchup would probably be, like, Texas and Vandy. Texas and Vandy, winner gets the other auto bid. I think we need to have we should have play-in games. I think play-in games are what we need in college football. In the offseason, we'll be talking about more how I would change college football because the whole schedule's messed up. I don't get the schedule. But with that being said, that is our show here, guys. We'll be back live Thursday. Army-Navy preview, the Heisman preview. We'll talk about all the odds, all that stuff there. So like I said, guys, thank you guys for helping us reach 15K. That was awesome. It helps us out a ton. And, yeah, guys, with that being said, we'll see you guys on Thursday.